Hello. Got some people still joining. Just give me a second to get everyone admitted. Awesome. All right, more people might join. We get going. I'm just go ahead and get started. So, welcome. I'm super excited that you were all able to make it here tonight live and in person, I guess, kind of virtually. I know a lot of people messaged me and said they were going to have to join this virtually. Or watch the recording later on. So it's so nice that you were able to join live for this class. I am super excited to just be sharing some really important things with you. So I will go ahead and get started. If you weren't able to join live and you're watching this recording later, I'm also super excited that you are with us, even if it's not in real time. So let me share my screen here. All right. So we are here for the Burnout to Balance Masterclass. And I could not be more excited. I have been looking forward to this all week. Well, honestly, since I decided to schedule it, I was like, I've been wanting to do a free offering for a while and finally just decided to put a date on the calendar and put it out there for people. So we are here today to talk about burnout and stress and how to transition out of that and into more purpose and joy and fulfillment in our lives. I'm Kayla Sweet. Most of you know me in some capacity, but some of you may not. I am a burnout resilience coach, among other things, but that's the capacity I'm showing up tonight for this call. So before we dive in, I just want you to take a moment, and you can close your eyes if you're that type of person that likes to visualize, but just take a second and think about what it would feel like if you had less stress. If you are on the other side of chronic stress, of burnout, of constantly waking up exhausted, of feeling like you're running on fumes, all of these things that we've so normalized, especially as women. This call I did craft specifically for women because we have very unique challenges around this. Just imagine what that would feel like to actually wake up energized and excited and not weighed down by all of the cumulative stress, not just the stress of the day, but all of the stress you've been carrying for days, weeks, months, who knows how long. What would it feel like to be on the other side of that exhaustion? Because that is part of my mission personally, to just help people transition from this constant running and spinning and feeling like you're on a hamster wheel and can't get off, to actually feeling rested and nourished and fulfilled in your life. So today we are going to cover a lot of different things, but the essentials are that we're going to do an overview of the 3-step, 3-phase burnout to balance process. That's not going to make sense to you yet. That's okay. This is just basically a way that I've condensed and synthesized information that I've gathered from all different types of training, education, and different sources throughout my professional career and my academic studies to really make this as simple and streamlined as possible. We're also going to talk about what's going to help you be successful in those areas that we'll go over, and what pitfalls might come up. What are the things that tend to get people stuck in the stress, in the cycles that keep you feeling exhausted? And it's important to know those so that you can avoid them when they come up in your life on your journey. We are also going to just hopefully give you some clarity on the steps that you can take to re-energize your life. And then finally, I will be wrapping up the call with some next steps for people who want deeper support in their life, on their journeys. If you are somebody that feels like you would really benefit from working with a burnout resilience coach, then I want to make sure that you have access and understand what that process looks like to get started. Again, that will be at the end. Whether you are here looking for that kind of support or not, my hope is that every single person on this call will walk out with either enhanced clarity or action steps or something you can do to benefit your life today. And then finally, we'll wrap up with a Q&A. So make sure you hang on till the end of the call. That way, if you have questions that you want to talk through, we'll have time to do that. You can also put your questions in the chat anytime throughout the talk. So if something pops in your mind, you can put it in there, and then I'll visit those at the end, kind of walk through, answer any questions that you might have. So I'm Kayla. Most of you, like I said, know me in some capacity, but I'm really here to move forward my mission of helping women live lives that are more balanced and passionate and filled with joy and fulfillment and excitement. And I have a slew of training. I have my bachelor's in psychology, my master's in consciousness and transformative studies. I've been trained in coaching, both as a mental health coach in another realm, and then also in like the coaching industry sense. I have multiple certifications in transformation coaching, self-care coaching, all of these different modalities to make sure that I am bringing you all of the tools that I possibly can that are coming from an evidence-based place. And part of my practice is just to come to you all from a place of love and my heart, and also to get you results. So doing things that actually work and connecting with things that matter in your life. But the real reason I'm here is because I have gone through my own burnout to balance process in my life. And it's been several years now that I've been feeling energized and fulfilled and excited about the life that I'm living. But maybe 6, 7 years ago, that was not the case. So I just want to share a little bit with you about kind of where I was at then, so that you can see the way that my own life has changed using these tools that I've learned through all of these different modalities and trainings that I've engaged in. So when I graduated with my bachelor's degree in psychology, I was super excited to like save the world, and immediately started working in the field of mental health at a community mental health center. I was super excited about that job and just felt like all of my dreams had come true. I had my bachelor's degree in psychology. I had done a good amount of healing work. I had dealt with plenty of stress. I considered myself a resilient person at that time. I felt well prepared, and I crashed and burned very quickly. I burned out completely within 6 months starting that job. And I was just running in circles unsustainably, trying to do way too much, feeling very frustrated and disillusioned and exhausted. My emotions by the end of it were just like really out of control, like crying every single day on the way to work. And it wasn't that I didn't feel connected to my work, because I knew it was important work. It was that I couldn't shake that exhaustion, that mental, physical, emotional exhaustion. I didn't have good boundaries within myself to do that work. So that was where I ended up. And I ended up leaving that employer and taking some time off to myself to heal and recover. And I thought that once I returned to the workforce after that, that my problems were all solved. But it wasn't that simple. Usually just changing an employer doesn't fix the problem, because all the things that got me stressed eventually got me into similar cycles again. Now, thankfully, I didn't have to continue quitting jobs because I was getting stressed and burned out. I actually was able to learn the tools and skills I needed to be able to create balance and enjoyment and passion. And so I'm really living this stuff that I'm sharing tonight. It's coming from the depths of my heart and soul, as well as evidence-based practices I've been exposed to and research that I've done through my academic studies. So it's really grounded in my personal experience, and that I don't want people to have to take years to go through that process to become less stressed. I want you to be able to get there quicker, have access to the tools and resources that you need to be able to do that. So before we dive into some of the things that you can do to start to change your life, I want to talk about stress and burnout as they exist at a physical level in our bodies, how they show up in our lives. So we won't spend too much time on this. I have another training that I do that really just spends an hour talking about stress at the physical level and things you can do to manage stress in your body. All really important stuff. If you're here in this class tonight, you're probably somewhat familiar with stress. You have a lived experience of what that feels like. So we will spend minimal time on the problem tonight, but I do want to make sure that we have an understanding that is shared amongst this group that stress happens physically and mentally. It happens at a neurological and physiological level in our bodies when we are presented with a real or imagined threat. So those would be those stressors. And that could be things in our work environment, people that are challenging to be around. It could be thoughts that we're thinking. Anytime we are exposed to these stressors, it triggers the stress response in our body. And that causes all kinds of things at a physiological level that lead to the exhaustion that we're talking about. So when you are feeling stressed, your cortisol is spiking, your adrenaline is surging, and basically your body is preparing to run. So your digestive system gets neglected because that's not important if you're running. And all of the essential functions that aren't needed to run are kind of delayed. So like your immune system, digestive system, those things aren't really the focus of your body in that moment. It goes to your large muscle groups. Obviously, for a prolonged period of time, that's really not helpful to stay in for your body. It increases your heart rate, your blood pressure. It's really meant to get you out of dangerous situations, not something you're meant to live in for a prolonged period of time. But our bodies don't know the difference between a car coming at us in the street and a thought that we aren't good enough or we just failed miserably. So all of these things feel equally dangerous to us, and we still have that stress response. And that will continue to happen until we do things to signal to our body that we're safe, that we're well, that we're okay. And that's where stress management comes in, is to deal with that physiological piece. Now, burnout happens when you are physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausted after prolonged, unprocessed stress. So everybody that deals with stress, has stressful jobs, doesn't burn out. There are people who deal with very high stress jobs that don't feel this. And that's not because they don't feel stress, it's because they process it. So when you aren't dealing with it in a healthy way on a regular and consistent basis, it builds up in your body, and then it creates very real mental exhaustion and emotional strain. Now, this is not a mental health diagnosis. So if you're struggling with stress and burnout, it can be paired with other things. And if that's the case, then you need to seek mental health therapy or other types of support from mental health professionals. But if you're dealing with burnout, especially occupational burnout, that's something that you can still function through. And that's why a lot of people don't really intervene, because you're still showing up for work, you're still doing your job, you just don't feel like you have a light on inside you anymore. You just don't feel excited anymore. But you're not functioning horribly, so you usually don't give yourself that permission, especially us as women. But the key to all of this is that the earlier you intervene, the quicker you're going to get results. So chronic stress happens on your way to burnout. It all starts with just simple stressors that aren't managed well, and then they build up over time. So the quicker you start to notice these things and you start to intervene and do the work that you need to, the quicker you'll start to see results in your life. And finally, I just think it's important to note that recovering from stress and burnout is about more than just doing self-care activities and managing your stress. Those are two really important parts of it, but there are roots that go deeper than that. And oftentimes people will engage in self-care or stress management type of activities, but they still have thoughts or beliefs or behaviors that are not serving them in their lives. And so if you take a bubble bath at the end of a day where you've deprioritized yourself and told yourself you were horrible all day, you're still going to feel really exhausted on the other side of that bubble bath. So there are internal things that have to shift to create a life that is more meaningful and more fulfilled. So some things that won't cure your burnout, in case you were wondering, more bubble baths, or insert your self-care go-to of choice, essential oils, candles, getting a massage. All those things are great. I'm not telling you not to do those things. I love a good bubble bath, but it's more about the internal place that you're coming to these activities from. If you're not doing the work you need to do to heal yourself, work through your thoughts, your emotions, your beliefs, the bubble baths aren't ultimately going to create more balance in your life. A vacation. Oftentimes when we get really exhausted, we think, well, I just need some time away. I just need some time off. Again, I am a big advocate for taking time off. I take time off all the time. I think it's important to schedule that into your life. But if you are scheduling a vacation reactively because you're so exhausted that you can barely function, and you're not dealing with any of the behaviors that got you there, you're going to come back from that vacation still feeling exhausted, or maybe you might get a temporary refresh for a couple days, but as soon as those habits and routines kick back in that you were doing before the vacation, you're right back where you started. Only now you have less, maybe PTO to use. Quitting your job. I've tried that route. Usually quitting your job isn't the answer. Sometimes if you are in like an extremely toxic environment, then yes, you want to remove yourself from situations that aren't treating you with respect or putting you in harm's way. Never would tell someone to stay in a toxic environment. But oftentimes, if we have to quit out of a place of reaction because we're so exhausted that we can barely function, we don't feel empowered in that. We feel like we had to quit because we didn't have a choice. That's very disempowering. What I recommend is doing the work that you need to do internally in your relationships and in your life. And then once you're coming to it from a place of healed and whole, you can decide if this is in alignment with what you want, what you need in your life, if it's aligned with your purpose and your passion. Powering through and hoping that someday you'll get to relax. So you're like waiting for retirement to come, because then you'll get to slow down. I have sad news for you, and that is that if you live your life pushing through stress, hoping that it's going to come in the future, there's always going to be something that comes up at those future points where you think you'll be able to relax that are going to be activating that stress again. You may even retire and now you've got new things to stress about. Maybe you're doing volunteer work. Maybe your family needs you more. Maybe your finances aren't as good. If you continue to process stress ineffectively or don't process stress at all, and you teach yourself that that's the only way forward, you get yourself into these loops mentally and behaviorally where you're doing things constantly that are going to keep you stressed, because our brain pathways, when we've done them once, twice, 3 times, 5 times, 10 times over a course of 10 years, they get very easy to return to those thoughts, those behaviors. So the more that we continue to cause ourselves stress and just kind of power through, we're basically creating a script that's going to run at a subconscious level for us and keep us doing those things or make it really hard to break out of it. So what will help your burnout? What will cure it? And what we're going to talk about tonight is the burnout to balance process, which, as I mentioned before, this is a synthesization of different research that I have done, different evidence-based practices that I've been exposed to, different books that I've read, and my own personal experience. So I didn't create these things I'm going to talk about. I have just packaged them together in a way that is easy to digest and understand and move through. So the first phase or stage of this process is to do your inner work. And we'll get more into what that means and what that looks like, but that has to be the foundation. You have to start within yourself first. Because if you don't have a solid foundation within yourself, you don't have a strong grasp of your thoughts, your beliefs, the way you relate to yourself, the way that you show love to yourself, you are going to be shaky in anything else that you try to move through. Once you have that foundation, then you're going to really focus on your relationships. So that could be romantic relationships, family relationships, relationships with friends, colleagues, supervisors, any other human being that you interact with. What we're trying to attain through relational mastery, as I call it, is balance and reciprocity in our relationships. We should be giving as much as we are receiving. We should be receiving as much as we are giving. There should be some give and take. And oftentimes when we find ourselves burned out and stressed out, it's because there's an imbalance. We aren't being poured back into. Maybe we're not even allowing ourselves to receive help. So that is super important. And then finally, once you have that groundwork done, you need to connect with what matters to you and why you're here, why you're doing particular work, what impact you want to leave on the world, like what matters to you. And it's important that this comes after the first two, because if you have strong passion and purpose, but it's not grounded in balance and self-love, you can still burn yourself out. So that's why we don't start with that one, because I had a lot of passion when I burned out, but it wasn't balanced. It wasn't doing it in a healthy and boundaried way. So we'll dive a little bit more into inner work. So what does this mean anyways? Basically, inner work is just anything that you are doing deliberately and on a consistent basis to reflect and to increase your own awareness of yourself, the people around you, and of the systems that you're operating in. Maybe that's your work system, your education system, your community, your society at large, just working really intentionally to increase that awareness and understand it better, and also to do that healing that you might need to do. So part of that is in your thoughts and beliefs. Once you've engaged in this for a prolonged period of time, and this is a very broad blanket, by the way, this is a very broad overview. There are a lot of different things that inner work can entail. But once you've engaged in it in a way that feels good for you, you will learn to manage your stress more effectively, and you will learn to shift thoughts and beliefs that aren't serving you. And that is really, really key, because when we are constantly thinking things or allowing our lives to be guided by beliefs that maybe we're not even aware of, beliefs like I'm not good enough, or I have to be perfect, or life is just hard and I just have to accept that everything's going to suck. We have these beliefs that we've inherited from the society, from our family systems, from the world around us that we didn't even pick, and yet they are basically steering our way through life. So when you start to do your inner work, increase your self-awareness, you can identify these thoughts and beliefs that are like steering you maybe in the wrong direction, and you can make choices about if you want to keep those thoughts and beliefs, or if you want to actually have some intentionality and some choice in that. So obviously a big part of this is just increasing your awareness. And when you do that, you also show up in more presence in your life, more presence with the people you love, more presence with yourself. You notice things that maybe you missed before, like the sun shining or setting or the stars at night, like just the little things that can make you feel excited start to be more evident, because you're not so just lost in the thoughts and the loop that's spinning in your head. It heals your inner landscape. So what does that mean? It means that you're able to access love and compassion and care for yourself, to really befriend yourself. And it connects you with who you really are, so that you're not just operating in the world as who you think you're supposed to be, or who your family wanted you to be, or who society told you you need to be, and this is what success looks like, but who you are actually choosing to be and who you are choosing to become, because we are constantly changing and this work never stops. So you want to start this, but you get to revisit it over and over throughout your life at different points as changes come up. So when you start this work, it gets you the foundation you need, but also gets you into practice of visiting it often. So the things that you focus on in this area are your thoughts, your beliefs, and your emotions. So bringing awareness to those thoughts and beliefs is a big part of that. And then deciding if we want to keep them or if we want to transform them, if we want to adopt something new. And then feeling our feelings, actually processing them and moving through them, rather than trying to like bypass them, because they still live in our bodies. And if we try to avoid them, things tend to get worse over time, not better. So that's a big part of this too, becoming aware of your emotions and what they're trying to tell you and how you can move through them rather than get stuck in them. So there are some pitfalls that you can encounter when you start to do this. And I want to make sure people are aware of that so that you can notice them when they come up in you if you start doing this work or if you're already doing it, but maybe you're having challenges along the way and you can try to navigate around them. First one is just information overload. So I don't want to tell you how many Google results you'll get if you get online after this class and put information over or put inner work into the Google search engine. You will be in information overload. There will be thousands and thousands and thousands of results, all telling you different things about what inner work means and where you should start, coming from all different kinds of sources. And if you are somebody that struggles having that amount of information at your fingertips and having no idea where to start, that could be a barrier for you. You might not want to dive into that once you realize what's out there. And I definitely experienced some of this. That's one of the reasons I enrolled in a master's program. I was like, there's too much information out there. I need somebody to guide me on what's credible and what's relevant and what actually works, because this is a lot. So being able to evaluate information and really assess what is based in evidence, what is going to be aligned with your values, what's going to be helpful to you, because there's a lot of different opinions out there to try to navigate when you do this work. You're also probably going to encounter some perfectionism and unrealistic expectations. I see oftentimes people who are starting to do this work use the tools that they're learning as tools of harm against themselves, essentially, because, well, I know how to change my thoughts, but I didn't do it right in this situation, or I didn't notice I was having the thought. And so it's because I'm unworthy or I'm not good enough, or I just can't do this. It doesn't look the way I thought it would. And you get frustrated. Or you expect yourself to just have this information one day and then the next day is magically better. Everything is perfect now. I wish I could guarantee you're going to finish this call and your whole life's going to be transformed, but that'd be an example of an unrealistic expectation. This is a process that you get to grow through. So being gentle with yourself and with your humanness, understanding that this isn't like a way to opt out of the human experience and never feel pain again. This is just a way to reduce the suffering within our lives. Oversimplification. What does that mean? That is really if you maybe learn a particular tool, a strategy, and you try to apply it to everything. So maybe you learn how to identify and change thoughts. And so you just want to like change all of your thoughts and just fix yourself that way. Or you learn about affirmations. And so you want to have an affirmation to fix every single thing in your life. Or you're going to like yoga it away, whatever your modality of choice is. When you start finding yourself wanting to apply one particular thing to every problem in your life, you might be oversimplifying and assuming that that one thing is like a fix-all, rather than embracing a variety of tools and modalities that are going to align differently for you at different days, at different points in the day, at different points in your life. It's not always going to be as simple as like one magic tool. Comparing yourself to other people. If you're looking at somebody else who's doing this work and they seem to be much more peaceful and you're not feeling peaceful, so you must be doing it wrong, or there must be something wrong with you. We tend to get so hard on ourselves when we're trying to heal because we think we need to look a certain way or be a certain way, show up a certain way. And whenever you find yourself comparing yourself to someone else, just know you are harming yourself. It's not helpful. It's not useful. You are on your own beautifully unfolding and unique journey that you need to really try to embrace and honor where you're at, because it's not going to look the same as anybody else's. They haven't been through your unique life journey. So their healing process and their inner work and their transformation is going to look different than yours. Guilt and shame. Now, this one is, it can happen with anyone, but I see it really often with women. And that is that if you maybe also struggle with some people-pleasing behaviors, as you start to focus your attention inward on yourself, you start to feel guilty or shameful because maybe you really know you don't have it that bad and your stress isn't bad compared to how some people's are. And there are people who don't have money for food. And so who are you to be stressed that you had an extra meeting at work today? You start to minimize your lived experience and feel like you shouldn't really spend this time focusing on yourself because for some reason you're not worthy of that attention and love and care. Or maybe you already have it too well and you're being self-indulgent. As women, we're very conditioned to believe that our focus needs to be on everyone and everything else first. And then once the world is perfect and everyone is happy and healthy, then we can focus on ourselves. But what happens is that never happens. There's always going to be people in need. There's always going to be things that need to be done. And if you don't take the time along that journey to focus on yourself, you're going to end up really tired along the way. And finally, just resistance to change. This is with anything. If you want to feel better, but you don't want to change what you're thinking, what you're doing, what you're believing, you just want to keep all that the same, but just magically feel better, then this is going to be frustrating because it's going to require some things to shift and change in the way you're thinking and in your life. So what I have integrated in this is that with every topic, every phase or stage, I have a quick exercise that you can utilize to start to tap into this phase. So this one I actually have borrowed from Brene Brown, full credit given to her. Didn't create this exercise, but I am a big Brene Brown fan. So I utilize a lot of her work often. If you don't know who she is, she's a researcher, social worker, writer, speaker. Look her up after this call. She's amazing. But this exercise is called, What Story Are You Telling Yourself? So the next time that you find yourself in the midst of stress and struggle and overwhelm and exhaustion, this is something that you can do to kind of check yourself and bring awareness to some of those thoughts and beliefs we've been talking about. So when you're in this place of struggle, you just need to pause, take a breath, and ask yourself some questions. What story am I telling myself about this situation? What thoughts am I thinking about this situation? And usually we don't realize that we have these narratives unfolding with everything that happens in our day. Somebody cuts us off in traffic and everyone in the world sucks. Like, why do people have to be so horrible? That's the story we're telling ourselves. We're telling ourselves that we are the victim of the mean person and there are too many mean people on the road. Maybe we try to call somebody and they don't answer. We call them multiple times and they are just ignoring us, we think. So the story we might be telling ourselves is that they clearly hate us. Maybe we arrive late to a meeting or a lunch and we're like, well, clearly they feel disrespected by me because I didn't honor their time. We're telling ourselves these stories, these narratives. We're giving ourselves this context that is so unfair to ourselves most of the time. And once you get good at this, hopefully you can shift those narratives to be kinder. But often when we're in stress and struggle, we tend to veer toward the negative. So when you ask yourself this simple question, it helps you to remember that your thoughts are not facts. Just because you're thinking it doesn't mean it's true. We think lots of untrue things throughout our days, all of us, all the time. And we think lots of negative and unhelpful things too. So when you give yourself some distance and create some mental space by asking yourself this question, reminding yourself that it's a story playing in your head rather than the reality that you're living in, the reality might be the car cut me off. The story I like to tell myself when someone does that is, they're in a big hurry. They probably have like a family member that needs them. Like, I tell myself a really nice story and maybe it's not true, but it makes me feel a lot better about being cut off in traffic. So I choose to live in that world. Some people might call that naive, but I'm pretty happy. So I think it's all right as long as you're telling yourself things that are helpful and healthy for you. We obviously don't want to live in worlds where we're not in reality, but I think telling ourselves stories that keep us motivated and growth oriented are important. And just a fun little fact here, the average person has somewhere between 12,000 and 60,000 thoughts per day. And this is kind of varies based on different research studies that have been done on this. But of those, about 80% are negative and 95 are repetitive. So the things that we're telling ourselves, the stories that we're telling ourselves throughout the day are more often than not negative and repetitive. And those repetitive thoughts, as I mentioned before, they're creating these brain pathways that are going to be easier and easier to access the more we have them. So it takes a lot of intentionality to notice these things and shift them and create new pathways that are more positive and healthy. So that's inner work. That's our quick overview of inner work, something that entire courses have been designed around. So know that that's not the whole depth of this subject. It's just a brief overview. So we're going to dive into relational mastery a little bit. So basically, developing relational mastery is about creating an ability to build relationships that are based on trust, respect, transparency, and I would add reciprocity. So that give and take, that equality within those relationships. So once you've mastered this, we're able to build yourself a healthy and supportive community, a group of people that care about you, that love you, that pour into you as much as you pour into them. Because just being surrounded by a lot of people we love doesn't mean that we are going to be protected from stress and burnout if we either aren't allowing them to support us, or we are just constantly pouring into them because we feel like their needs are higher than ours. And so we're deprioritizing ourselves over and over and over. That creates a lack of balance in those relationships. And ultimately, it can lead to resentment. So it doesn't help your relationships to constantly be giving more than you're receiving. And it also makes people feel like you maybe don't need or want them around if you never accept support. This also helps with boundaries. So when you have relational mastery, when you've created relationships built on trust, respect, transparency, and reciprocity, you are able to draw boundaries that are life-giving. You are able to say no when you need to. You're able to say yes to the things you want to. You are able to create space in your relationship so that you aren't feeling like you are constantly responding to everything and everyone around you, but you also are taking time to check in with yourself. Part of this is communication. So as you develop this, your communication with others improves because you learn to advocate for what you need and what you want and ask for it. And it embraces vulnerability. Told you I was a big Brene Brown fan. I have read all of her books, listened to all of her podcasts, and her big thing is vulnerability. And this is absolutely essential in a boundaried and healthy way. We have so many misconceptions about what vulnerability means. And we think it just means we need to be like pouring our heart out with no boundaries and no context all the time. That's not actually vulnerability. And that could be really unhealthy for other people around us. But vulnerability is about being honest and authentic and showing up as we actually are in our relationships. So the big focus is in developing this skill set, this relational mastery ability, are those boundaries, being able to draw them, enforce them, being able to embrace vulnerability in a healthy way, being able to communicate effectively and in a way that is compassionate and respectful of the other people. So this isn't just about like drawing boundaries at the cost of everyone around you, where you're hurting feelings left and right, but being able to do so in a way that is both respectful of yourself and of the people that you're relating with. And finally, I include within this the relationship to yourself, because we are in a relationship with ourselves, a relationship that might be founded on trust and love and care, or might be actually a really unhealthy relationship where we're mean to ourselves all the time. And if you're mean and judgmental to yourself, you're going to have trouble relating to other people from a healthy place. So that has to be part of this conversation. So there's some pitfalls, again, that you might encounter as you start to try to develop these skills within your relationships. And one of the biggest ones is just trouble saying no. It's uncomfortable. We don't like doing it. If we've got some perfectionism or some people-pleasing tendencies, especially, or we're really high achievers, saying no might make us feel weak. It might make us feel unhelpful. All these things that we might identify with to give ourselves meaning in our lives. We might feel like they're threatened by saying no. If I say no, I'm not a good person. If I say no, I'm not helpful. So we give ourselves all these excuses and we feel really uncomfortable. Or maybe we do say no, and then we just guilt trip ourselves for saying no for like a long time. Like you deny a dinner request, and then you just feel guilty the entire night when you were supposed to be spending time with yourself relaxing, but you're just actually spending the whole time shaming yourself for saying no to this invitation. We do stuff like this all the time, and that's going to interfere with our ability to relate in healthy ways with the people around us. And having boundaries with our colleagues and our friends and our family members and our relational partners in our lives is essential. We do not burn out in isolation, and we don't get to recover in isolation. We are creatures of community. We need each other, and we need each other in a boundaried and healthy way. Overwhelm, it can feel like a lot to try to manage all the relationships in your life. So maybe don't like start with all of them at once. You focus on those key ones, maybe the ones that you're interacting with the most often, and then transfer that to other relationships as you get more comfortable with drawing boundaries. Start in safe environments with the people you trust the most. Try to really get that practice rather than trying to change every single dynamic and every single relationship you have today after this call. Take it one step at a time. Again, we're going to see some of that guilt and shame come up around trying to do this work, especially around those boundaries, around saying no, around asking for what we need. The guilt and the shame can emerge. And we also see resentment happen because if we haven't been asking for what we need or drawing boundaries, but we've been pouring into other people, pouring, we often have this unspoken assumption that they will be able to mind read what we need when we need it, and they will pour back into us, even if we never ask. And when they don't, resentment builds. So we might not even be feeling that positive about people by the time we get to this work. Might be feeling pretty resentful and pretty angry at them because we feel that they've taken advantage of us for however long we've been in this relationship with them, whether that's at work or at home. So that can be a big obstacle to try to overcome and invest back into this relationship and rebuild trust. But really, that the culprit is ourselves, right? When we don't ask for what we need and we expect other people to meet it, that's not really fair to the people around us. So we also have to come to some forgiveness and compassion around these things. Fear of vulnerability. I hear so often that people aren't comfortable with being vulnerable. They don't want to be honest about how they're feeling. It's gross. It doesn't feel good. To build relationships that are healthy and reciprocal, there has to be some level of vulnerability. Like I said, it doesn't mean you're like pouring out all of your personal information, every hardship you've ever experienced in every interaction. That's not healthy vulnerability. That's not boundaried relationships. But being able to be honest in your relationships and ask for what you need, and also accept that sometimes you might ask for something that the other person's not able to give you, and you have to be okay with that too. All of that is part of vulnerability. Insecurities. If we don't feel super comfortable in ourselves, we don't feel like we deserve certain things, then showing up in ways that are boundaried and asking for what we need can be really hard, can feel really uncomfortable. Low confidence, that kind of goes hand in hand with that. If we don't feel like we have what we need to show up well in these relationships, or we have this belief that we're flawed in some way, it's going to make it really challenging. And then finally, just neglecting that relationship with yourself. Again, I said that was a key part of this, and that is because your relationship with yourself and the way you treat yourself, it's mirrored in the people that you end up surrounded by. So if you treat yourself in a really neglectful way, really mean to yourself, you're kind of teaching yourself that that's what you deserve and that's what you'll tolerate from other people around you, or from work environments, or from friendships where you're constantly giving because you believe that you deserve to not be treated well. You deserve to have your needs put on the back burner because that's what you do with yourself all the time. So you're used to it. So you really have to focus on cultivating that self-love as part of this. All right, practice saying no. So this is your exercise for this part of it. So when it comes to your relationships, I know everyone's probably like, oh, awesome. The one thing I didn't want to do. When it comes to your relationships and boundaries, saying no is super important. So I want to ask you to reframe the way you think about saying no. Reframe saying no as an act of love and respect. Because when you say no, because you don't have the capacity to do something, you create space for honesty and authenticity and vulnerability in that relationship. That's respectful. When you say yes and you don't have the capacity and you build resentment towards that person, and over time you want to be around them less and less because you're constantly giving to them and you aren't feeling like you're receiving because you never ask and you also never say no, that's not kind. That's not loving and respectful. That's not something that you can do when you're really trying to live a life that's centered from your heart. So refocus or reorient yourself to the way you think about saying no as something that is not just something you're done out of spite or when you're angry or for people you don't like. This is a really respectful, loving thing to do. When you say no regularly, your yes means more. If you say no when you don't have the capacity, then when you say yes, people know it's because you mean it. They know it's because you're excited, because you're committed, because you can really dedicate yourself to that thing. When you say yes to everything, you become so worn thin that those contributions become less and less valuable to the people in our lives. If we're doing them with less and less presence, with less and less generosity. So we have to be able to say no for our yeses to be really valuable. So to help you with saying no, the next time that you are asked to do something new, whether that's at work or at home, in your relationships, from a friend, pause before you answer. This sounds simple, but the truth is, anytime a request is asked of us, we have three options. We can say yes, we can say no, or we can negotiate. Oftentimes, we don't give ourselves the choice of the second two. We react and we say yes. We don't give ourselves the option of just saying no without excuses and just honoring that no is the answer because that's how we feel, because we just don't want to do the thing. And that can feel uncomfortable at first. I used to really struggle with this with my family members. They don't want me to run random errands all the time. And when I started saying no, I thought they were going to like hate me. I'm like, it's going to be the worst thing ever. But that's not what happens. They just learn that, well, if Kayla's got Kayla time and she says, no, it's not about me. It's just because she's got Kayla time. Like, that's just something she does now. So I think we build it up in our minds to think that we don't have these other options or that our relationships are going to fall apart or our work ethic will be questioned. But we do have an option. We have a choice. And you need to give yourself space to decide which of those options is going to be best for you. And if it's related to work, you might not always be able to say no. If it's like, this is a new job duty that you have to take on, and I just want to be like, no, I'm good, thanks. I mean, probably depends on your work culture if that would fly or not, but you might have the ability to negotiate. And what that means is maybe you don't just say yes right away. Maybe you ask some questions, maybe you get some clarity. Maybe if you're really stretched thin, you ask for other things to be deprioritized or taken off your plate so that you can this new thing that you're being asked to do, because we only get 24 hours in a day and we can't say yes to everything. So giving yourself that empowerment to pause and have that choice. And some questions you can ask yourself when these things emerge while you're in your state of pause are like, just, do I want to? Is this something that I would enjoy doing? Is this something I want to say yes to? Something I'm excited about? Is this something I have the capacity to do? Like if I were to look at my schedule, do I have the room in it to commit to whatever this thing is, whatever this relationship is requesting of me? And if I said yes, would it be from a place of true commitment or would it be from a place of obligation? Because when we're saying yes from a place of obligation, again, that builds that resentment, that frustration, that irritability, that exhaustion, that stress. All of that comes when we aren't saying yes from a place of actual commitment. So that's your activity for that section. I know everyone's going to be anxious to go practice this as soon as the call ends. All right, our final section here is passion and purpose. Passion is about doing things that bring you joy. It's about the what. It's about the things that are interesting to you, are exciting to you, that make you feel invigorated. And purpose is about meaning, about cultivating meaning in your life. It's about the why you are doing it. And you need both to really embrace balance and fulfillment. And again, you need those first two. You got to lay that foundation and have those boundaries first. You don't want to allow your passion to consume you to the point where you're self-neglecting. So this is something that needs to come from a boundary place. But when it does, it connects you to your values. It allows your actions to be guided by your values. So what matters to you is the guiding light in your life. The things that matter most are what you're filling your life with and how you navigate challenges. It helps you cultivate moments of inspiration and joy when you're doing things that you enjoy, that bring you excitement and curiosity, and you know why you're doing it. You feel motivated, you feel connected to the larger world around you, to the organizations you're working in. And some people get purpose from their work, and some people choose to get purpose in other ways, from their family unit, from their volunteer work. Maybe their purpose isn't aligned with helping other people at all. It doesn't have to be. Maybe their purpose is just to inspire creativity, or to curiously engage with the world, or to problem solve. It can vary based on the person and what matters to them and what excites them and what gives meaning to their lives. So this is very unique and individualized as to what are you connected with? What are you passionate about doing, and why do you enjoy doing it? And how can you integrate that wherever you go? Because passion and purpose aren't something that get married to a vocation or to a job. They're actually the gifts that you get to carry around with you inside yourself, in your heart, in your soul. And the jobs, the vocations, the activities that we do in our lives are just vehicles. They're just ways that we get to deliver the gift. So the gift stays the same. The passion and the purpose are things that happen inside of you. And the things that we do in the world are just outlets for it. That means you can change your job or your field or all of these activities that you're doing and still be in the same alignment with what matters to you. And what happens when you do this is it takes you from burned out and exhausted to energized and excited. So in the work that I do, I don't just want people to feel a little less tired, because that's not a life any of us aspire to. We want to be excited about our lives. We want to feel fulfilled in our lives. We want to have things that we're looking forward to, that wake us up in the morning ready to go, rather than thinking, how am I going to do this for another day? That's the transition we want to make. And it takes time to get there. So don't expect it to all happen at once. But ultimately, like, reach for the stars. Like, don't stop with just less tired. Keep going until you get to a place where you're really feeling aligned in your life. We want to have that fulfillment. Passion and purpose give us fulfillment. There's a big difference between achievement and fulfillment. And sometimes we get mixed up with these because we think if we've achieved enough, we will feel fulfilled. The fulfillment, again, is something that we can carry inside of us, regardless of what's happening, of what we've done in our lives. So the different focus points for this are values-driven action. So knowing your values, connecting with them, and using those to drive your behaviors. Connecting to your passion, identifying the things that do excite you. You might not know, you might not remember, you might not have taken a lot of time to spend doing things that make you curious and excited. So you might have to rediscover that. Identifying what your purpose is and finding a way to articulate that is so important. It's so empowering. If you wake up every day and you know why you're doing what you're doing and how you want to show up with people, it just gives you this golden thread to weave through your life, whether things are good or bad or happy or challenging. You know why you're there, and that keeps you motivated even through the challenging days, because no matter how great you get at balancing your life, you're still going to have hardships happen. You're going to experience loss. There are going to be challenges as part of our human experience. But if we are grounded in our values and in our purpose and in our passion, and we have good boundaries around all of that, we can really get to a very fulfilled and healthy place. Some of the things that can get in the way here, maybe some self-doubt. Maybe we don't think we deserve to live a life of passion and purpose. That seems like something that's made for other people, but not for us. We don't know if we can. We don't know what we want. There's confusion around it. There's lack of clarity. You might not have given yourself permission to really think about it. You might have just been doing the things that society has told you to do, or your family has told you to do, or the books you've read have told you to do. You're trying to fit this mold of what other people have told you will make you happy, and you maybe haven't spent time really identifying with what you're passionate about or what makes you feel purposeful in your life. So you might need to spend some time exploring. You might be scared of failing. Like, what if I go for things that I'm passionate about and I fail? You can't fail. If you are exploring and being curious and being interested and excited about your life, there is no failure. There's imperfection. Yeah, lots of it. It's not meant to be perfect. It's not a straight line. It's about discovering what lights you up every day. Societal expectations. Maybe the things that we are really passionate about or what we believe our purpose is maybe don't align with what we think the world wants of us or what people from our background are allowed to do. And we might allow that to hold us back. Might be impatient. We just want everything to magically manifest overnight and just have all of these results. But this is something that happens with time and consistency and curiosity, something that you have to build, something you have to really work to identify and also know that some of these things are going to change over time in different phases and stages of your life. Your purpose in your 20s might look very different than your purpose in your 60s. Life's going to take you all kinds of ways. So you have to also be flexible, willing to reorient as you go. If you feel like you don't have support from your relationships or from your societal structures, that can be a barrier. We can use that as an excuse as to why we shouldn't pursue these things. And guilt. Again, we might feel like, who am I to think I deserve to have this big, extravagant, meaningful, passionate life? Like, my life's not that bad. I'm very grateful for what I have. I know I'm very blessed. So really doing all of this is just excess and it's selfish and it's unnecessary. We might be telling ourselves stories around that. We might feel guilty for pursuing the things that really matter to us. But by pursuing the things that really matter to you, you open your life to experience and you allow people into your life that were meant to be there. And the experiences that you can create are beyond what you can imagine right now. And the way that you'll impact the people around you is beyond what you can imagine. So when you dedicate this time to yourself and to doing the inner work and to managing your relationships and to identifying your passion and purpose, you show up better, not just for yourself, but for everyone around you, for your communities. So this really isn't selfish work. It's necessary work that we all need to do because the world really needs more people who are living in this type of alignment. So your activity for this final phase, I like to call Time Machine. And this is just to help you get in touch with your passions. So I'm not going to work through this with you now because I want to respect our time together. But at a later point, so you can take a screenshot as I go through this or write down the steps. But spend some time thinking about when you were a kid, maybe somewhere between like 5 and 11, somewhere where you can remember that age range, but you were still young enough that maybe all of the pressures of your peers in society hadn't like corrupted you yet. And think about what things brought you the most joy, interest, curiosity, and excitement then. Just like really spend some time with this and write down everything you can think of that you enjoyed and allow yourself to get curious about that. What things were already alive within you, even in your youth? And then find one thing from all of that list of all the different things that brought you joy and excitement that you loved doing as a kid and do it this week as an adult. Last weekend, we raked up all the leaves and I jumped in the leaf pile because that's something kids do. And it's maybe a little gross. Like I was a little like, I don't really know what's in these leaves, but there's something fun about leaves. And it reminded me of being a kid. And we deserve to have that excitement and joy in our lives, just like we did when we were young and we didn't care what people thought. So when you really engage in this type of work and try to explore what those innate things were that brought you joy, interest, curiosity, and excitement, and then you start practicing them as an adult, it can help you identify passion. It can help you get closer to the things that you most enjoy and are most aligned with. But even if it doesn't, it's going to connect you with some joy. It's going to connect you with your inner child. So even if you realize like, yeah, that's not something I'm still passionate about, you'll probably get a laugh out of it. You'll probably get some positive memories that you're like going through and processing and remembering when you're experiencing it. So it's still going to be a win. It's about trial and error when it comes to passion, because passion isn't built just like magically, like you're just born and passion is there. Passion is built over time when you allow yourself to engage with the things you're curious about. So you have to actually engage in them. You have to be willing to experiment and to be bad at things and to be embarrassed to ignite what most excites you. So kind of wrapping up, these are the steps that you can take to re-energize your life. You can do that inner work. You can make the choice to focus on your thoughts, your beliefs, and your emotions, get more self-awareness around that. You can focus on your relationships, build a strong and supportive community around you that's boundaried and that pours into you as much as you pour into it. And you can connect with your passions and define your purpose, give yourself that meaning and alignment in your life. But don't try to do them all at once. Once you get off the call today, don't try to fix every single area instantaneously. So you're going to like fall right into that overwhelm trap. Pick one place to start. Pick one of the activities from one of the areas that most aligns with you, that feels like it'd be most helpful for you, and give it a shot. Try it out throughout the rest of this week or next week, or when the holidays roll around. Saying no might really come in handy then. So it's good timing for that. And once you've picked a place to start, just take baby steps and be gentle with yourself and kind to yourself along the way. Now, as we wrap up, I promise that if there's anyone on this call that is ready for deeper support, that I would explain what that could look like. So Burnout to Balance is the name of this masterclass. It's also the name of the program that I have created, a coaching program to bring women through this process and have one-to-one individualized coaching support. So if you are somebody that has really struggled with stress in your life, and you maybe haven't gotten the results you want on your own, or you've tried all these different things and read all these books, tried all these interventions, tried all the fads with your diet and with the essential oils and all of this, like nothing's working, you might want support. You might want one-to-one support, and Burnout to Balance provides that. So what this program is a complete roadmap to walk you through how to implement this process I've gone through with you today. So it is a fusion of one-to-one coaching with me and an online platform that basically walks you through different resources, different exercises, and gives you all the information you need so you aren't bombarded with that information overload when you're trying to do these things. You've got like a guide to kind of walk you through and give you ideas of where to start. And then you get that one-to-one support to make sure that it's individualized to your unique path and your unique journey and needs and interests, and that you can kind of talk through things as they arise that are challenging and figure them out. So again, this is an online platform that is combined with one-to-one support, unlimited access to me, weekly coaching sessions. So it is a more intensive program. It's meeting with me once a week to really dive into these topics that we've talked about and get that support that you need to create transformation in your life. So I do want to talk a little bit to who this might not be for, because just because you're on this call or you're listening to this recording later doesn't mean that this is a good fit for you. So I want to be really transparent about that. The people that this is not for, and I have women listed for all of these because that's the population that I'm passionate about working with. That's who I've designed this program for. It's not for people who aren't ready to invest in themselves. If you are still telling yourself you don't deserve to focus on yourself, you're not ready, and that's okay. You are where you are. I don't want anyone to begin working with me if they aren't really ready to spend time with themselves, because they will be spending a lot of time with it if they join this program. If you're wanting something that's an effort-free miracle, it's just not realistic. I think we should all be a little skeptical of any like promises that something's going to require no effort and give 100% results, because that's usually too good to be true. Doing this work is challenging. It requires commitment. It requires you show up for yourself, that you work through things that are challenging every day. It's not for people looking for a guru or somebody to give them all the answers. Part of my work is empowering women to take authorship of their own lives, to take leadership in their own lives. That wouldn't be very effective if I told you everything that you needed to do. Rather, I help to coach and guide my clients to access their own voice and to really respect what's within them that they already know and allow that to show up in their lives and guide them. And sometimes we need some support with that initially because women aren't really socially conditioned to trust ourselves. We are conditioned to believe in other people first and to always turn outward for our validation. And so when I work with people, it's about turning that lens back inward and honoring what you already have to bring. So if you're wanting someone to give you all the answers, you would be disappointed. And finally, if you're not struggling with stress or chronic stress or feeling burned out, it's not for you. This program is specifically for people struggling with stress that need support and guidance as they navigate their way out of it, that are committed to taking a different path forward than the path that's got them there. If you're not stressed, you're already living a life of balance, you can still use these tools I've talked about and still focus on these different areas of life. I think we all can, no matter where we're at in our life journeys. But this more intensive type of support is really not what you need if that's where you're at. So if you are somebody that is on this call right now live or that is listening to this recording later on, I do want to make sure you know how to apply to work with me if this program sounds interesting to you. You're just going to go to internallyguidedleadership.com/burnout to balance. There is a very brief application at the bottom of that page. It's just a handful of questions to help me get to know you. You can put your answers in there and note that you attended this class, because if you attend this class either live or you watch the recording before next Saturday, and you decide that you would like to explore this program, you will get a discount when you enroll. So you'll get $500 off of the investment if you enroll before next Saturday. That's not to say you have to enroll then. The program is still going to be offered after that. That's just for an exclusive discount. So if you're watching this recording later on, that's okay. You still have the opportunity to enroll. Just because you apply doesn't mean you're committing to enrolling. The way that I handle applications is that once I've reviewed it, I look it over, I see if it seems like it would be a good mutual fit. If so, we get on a call, we spend about an hour talking about your unique situation, make sure that it's going to be a good fit for you. If it seems like something else is going to be better for you, maybe I'll suggest therapy if there are other things going on. Maybe there's some trauma that needs to be processed or some mental health diagnoses that really need different kinds of treatment. I will direct you in that way. I will send you, refer you outward. If I feel like you are somebody who's a perfect fit for this program, that's the point where we would discuss getting started working together. So if you want to apply, really that's just getting the ball rolling to have that deeper conversation to see if it would be a good fit. It's not a commitment to enroll. Or you can take some other paths. So if you've been in this class and you've been listening to all of this, hopefully you have some idea of where to start in doing this yourself and to really trying to enrich your life using these tools. And this can be super helpful and effective for folks. I've done plenty of do-it-yourself stuff in my life, and I'm a big supporter of it. Sometimes we just want to go through the trial and error and figure it out and explore the things at our own pace, at our own time, in the privacy of our own mind. There's nothing wrong with that. If you are a do-it-yourselfer, more power to you. I hope that you will follow me on social media, subscribe to my email list so that we can stay connected. I'm continuing to create new free classes, new free resources. I would love to support you on that journey of just kind of navigating this process and creating more balance and fulfillment in your life. Some things, if you decide to go the do-it-yourself out or do-it-yourself route, just to know that you aren't going to have that support of someone who's been there, someone who's trained in supporting your well-being and who's also experienced burnout and how to navigate all of this terrain themselves. I am very experienced in this realm personally and professionally, and I love supporting other people, and sometimes it's nice to have someone in your corner as you do this work. So that's just something to keep in mind that you might not have if you decide to go it your own. And maybe you can find that support in other ways too, through other communities. But it does take longer without support. So I do suggest if you go the do-it-yourself route that you find ways to be supported in that. or you can choose to stay stuck. This is about empowerment. You always have a choice. You can continue to do things exactly as you've always done them. You can remain stressed out. That's your choice. I hope you don't choose that, just because I think the world deserves you at your best. And I think that you deserve you at your best. I think every single one of us neglects what really matters in life when we don't spend the time to really become the best, fullest, happiest version of ourselves. So I hope that one way or another you invest in yourself, but the choice is ultimately yours. So again, if you do want to look into working with me, it's internallyguidedleadership.com/burnout to balance. Just apply before next Saturday if you want to get that discount. And I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see all of your lovely faces. And I'm going to check out the chat here to see if I've got any questions. Do we have any questions kind of offhand as I'm pulling up the chat?
I can't think of any right now.
Can't think of any. Okay, I saw some questions here. What are some examples of inner work, therapy, meditation? Therapy is absolutely a type of inner work. If you feel like you need mental health support, especially maybe you struggle with anxiety or depression, or you've been through significant trauma, therapy is a phenomenal place to start and to get that groundwork and that foundation, that healing in place before you engage in any kind of like coaching. This work that I do is really about the present moment where you're at now and getting you closer to results and having support in that. Therapy is going to give you a different level of support where it's going to be more sensitive to processing through trauma and things like that. So depending on your situation, that might be a better route for you, or might be where you need to start and get to a certain point through that. Meditation is definitely another great example of inner work. That's a way that you can increase your awareness of your thoughts and to kind of learn to direct them, to direct your focus. And that's another evidence-based practice. Doing different meditation techniques can be very helpful. Oh, and then it looks like the person who posted that had to log off. So hopefully they'll be able to catch the replay to get that answer. But that was a great question. Do you have any other questions just about chronic stress, trying to navigate through this realm of burnout and creating more fulfillment? I know I just like poured a lot of information on you all, so I would love to hear if there are other thoughts or questions about all of this information.
I do have a question. I would love to be on camera, but my camera will not, it'll turn on, but it won't show my face. I'm not sure why. But a question that I have is, especially when doing inner work, and also while working, I tend to kind of thought spiral, kind of like when you think someone's mad at you and like you kind of go through that, but just with absolutely anything. Sometimes even while doing that inner work, like overthinking sometimes can be overwhelming. What are some tips that you have to help combat that, not only when doing inner work, but just working in general?
Yeah, and I think this is kind of comes in with some of those pitfalls we talked about when you might get like trapped in a perfectionism spiral, or you start like over analyzing everything because you're trying to be like hyper aware and figure out the reasons for everything. Sometimes, especially if you're like in the middle of a busy workday, that might not be the time or the place to really dive in and explore. That might be something for like journaling later that night to really unpack it all. If you're in the midst of it, really trying to connect with your physical environment is really helpful, which might not be so much taking you into the inner work, but more grounding you in the reality so that you're not kind of arguing with reality in your mind or arguing with the story in your mind, but just accepting your current environment, where you are, who is around you, what it smells like, the wind is blowing, if the sun is shining, like just getting in tune with your body and what's actually happening if you're kind of thought spiraling. Because when we get into over analysis of every single thing, we can really quickly take ourselves from like a healing and accepting place to a very critical, perfectionistic place that is anxiety inducing. So we have to have those techniques to kind of pull ourselves out when we're not taking that the way that is maybe helpful. I hope that maybe gave you some element of answer to that question, Kayla.
Oh, thank you. That helps a lot. I think grounding can be like so useful, but so easy to forget in the moment. But sometimes the physical is like all you can connect to in the moment when you're like just in it.
Yes, exactly. And it's one of those things that's like so simple we forget. Like, oh yeah, I can just breathe and I can just notice what's around me and I can just be in my body for a minute. We don't always give ourselves permission to slow down to that level. We forget it's available to us. So, yeah. Any other thoughts, questions? I know it's kind of can be awkward, especially in like a group of strangers to talk about this stuff, but it's so great being able to see some of your faces. I've just been talking to my PowerPoint for the last hour, so
I think you give a lot of great information, things I never really thought about. So,
awesome. I'm so glad. Well, hopefully everybody found something useful, some seed of something that you can take with you into your life, into your day, into the weekend and the holiday season. If things come up for you after the call, you're always welcome to send me an email or reach out to me on social media. Um, yeah, I'm pretty easy to find. So internallyguidedleadership.com, there's a contact form on there and like links to all the social media sites. My email and everything is on there. So yeah, I guess if there aren't any questions, I'll go ahead and wrap up. Oh, we got one. All right.
So as far as you were talking about boundaries with the relational mastery, so in the workplace, and if you're trying to draw those boundaries as maybe like, work and home balance, and maybe these expectations at work that you have to, take on multiple tasks because the people around you are doing these things. And so there's this almost expectation sometimes then that if you're not doing that, then you're not doing your job to the degree in which, is expected of you because other people are doing that. But then you see that they're like burning out and you don't want to be in that position. Like, I guess kind of maybe some techniques to navigate those situations, especially in the workplace when sometimes it's hard to, voice some of that. Maybe it's not as comfortable to voice some of that, especially if it's somebody who is maybe in a leadership role and you notice these tendencies and I guess how to navigate those situations in the workplace.
Yeah, I think it's especially hard when it's the people that we're like reporting to that are engaging in like the hustle culture or the perfectionism or the overworking, and they're doing this. And so then we feel like the assumption is that we also have to do this. And it can be hard, I think, when you're bringing up, especially if it's a supervisor, to them where your boundaries are and what you're willing to commit to. But ultimately, you can't be forced to work 60 hours a week or whatever it might be that someone else is choosing to do. If that's not written into your agreement, you can choose to voice, this is where I'm at in my life. These are the commitments I'm trying to balance. This is how many hours a day it takes to complete these things. And I want to show up my best. I think if we go to these conversations with the intention of, I'm committed to excellence, I want to show up in a way that's effective. I can't do that if I'm doing way more things than I have capacity for within a given day. That's usually a good place to start, because I think sometimes when we start talking about drawing boundaries with work, there's like assumptions of like laziness or like quiet quitting or like entitled millennials and Gen Z. Like there's a lot of conversation out there about how we're super needy. It's not about that. It's about wanting to be so nourished that you can actually provide excellence in every single thing you're doing. You can't do that if you don't have anything left. So when you come to that conversation explaining, I want to be able to give my all to this, with the current way that this is functioning, it's not working for me. I'm not showing up my best. What can we look at restructuring or reassigning? Just because someone else is doing all the things, but doing it poorly or doing it at the cost of their own like well-being, is not a good reason for us to do it too. So I think it depends on the culture of the work too and the environment. And sometimes in these conversations, when we try to advocate for ourselves and we find it's not working, that might be moments where we're illuminating to ourselves that maybe this isn't such a healthy environment. If we're not being encouraged to advocate for our own well-being, is that really something we want to support long term? So hopefully that was somewhat helpful. I know it's kind of convoluted.
It's definitely, I appreciate that insight. Thank you.
For me, it's really about showing up like well. Like I like to do things well. I'm a recovering perfectionist. So when I am engaging with work, I still want to be considered somebody that's very effective and efficient at whatever work they're doing, that's showing up in a way that gets results, that gets people what they want. I like having that sense of achievement and success. And I know that I'm not going to be able to do that if I'm committed to too many things at once, if I'm not rested, if I'm not nourished, if I'm stressed out. So I kind of have found a way to align that like desire for achievement with balance, because I know I produce my best work when I'm rested. So it gives me a little bit easier access to that permission within myself.
Definitely. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any final thoughts? All right. Well, it's been a pleasure sharing some things with you all today. I hope everybody took something away from it. You don't have to share with the group or anything, but I've been told that learning is more effective when you reflect on the most important parts for you. So as we wrap up the call and sign off, I would encourage you to just spend a couple minutes thinking about what from this call stood out the most to you, and what from this call would you like to start implementing in your life. Because just spending that time reflection on the content will help you to actually have some results in that area, as opposed to it just being another thing that you did for an hour and then you never think about again and everything stays the same. So that's my encouragement to everyone, and many of you I know. So feel free to reach out to me if you have other questions as you start to think about this stuff, or as things come up. I'm always happy to offer support and answer questions along the way. So
Thank you, Kayla.
thank you all. I'm so glad you were able to be here live. I know our lives are busy, so enjoy your evenings. I know it's kind of late depending on what time zone you're in, but I hope that you have a beautiful night and a restful weekend.
You too. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so
Kayla.
much.
Thank you.